Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fantastic episode of Alone in the Thoughts Room. I am your host, Ali Ryerson, and this week we have a very special guest. He is actually going to be the very first author appearing on this podcast. So I'm super excited, as all of you guys should be, because he is a crime thriller writer, and we all know how that genre is sweeping our nation right now. So I would like to give a warm welcome to James Michels. James, hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So in the recent years of your life, you have written approximately 4 books that have been published. Is that correct?
The fourth book actually will be published later this month. January 25th is the goal date.
Fantastic. And so the 3 books that you have already published are on Amazon and Audible, correct? Or is that Kindle?
It's on Kindle. They're all available on Amazon on Kindle Unlimited, and paperback.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to start with the most basic question ever, and I'm sure you are sick and tired of hearing this. But we have to know, how did you get into writing, and why did you pick this specific genre?
Well, that's actually a very good question. It's one of my favorites. So what got me into it was actually I started writing the first book, Ice Rising, as a sort of challenge to myself, really. Just, I decided one day, I've always been an avid reader, and I said, why don't I just try writing a book? And so I started writing it, and then eventually the book was getting so long that I realized I would probably have to break it off into a series, and then I had other ideas that came to mind. So as I was writing, I discovered I just had this uncanny knack to create a whole story. So from there, I really realized I had a talent, and I decided to cultivate that. So that was about 4 years ago that I started on this journey, and here I am now with almost 4 published titles under my belt. And I'm writing a 5th one as we speak.
Wow, so you've had a very busy last couple of years, or few years, I should say. And so
Yeah.
what were you doing before this? Anything worthwhile, or was it just you decided to challenge yourself one day and then it took you down this journey you probably had no idea?
Um, Really, I had no idea this was going to be me. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would be an author, I'd tell you were crazy. But I did pick this genre of crime because it's something I've always been fascinated with, and that's actually what led my initial career path when I was younger. I wanted to be a police officer,
Aw.
and I ended up joining the Michigan Department of Corrections as an officer, where I'm still currently employed, 7.5 years later.
That's awesome. So naturally, my next question now is, do you draw inspiration from your life, or do these stories just kind of come to you?
It's really a mixture of both. So each of my books has a different origin story. Ice Rising and its sequel, Ice Box, are actually heavily influenced by former criminals that I know. People who had a lot of potential, but they used it to for crime instead of the legitimate world. So, and they ended up paying the price. They went to prison,
Mm-hmm.
but they got out, changed their life, and now so they have that redemption story as well. So my main character, Alexander Lincoln, also known as Ice in the books, he is the representative of misused potential. You hear a lot of stories of everybody who had potential that they just didn't use. Here's one who used it for the wrong purposes. And then The Ballad of Johnny Carlo, which is my first standalone novel, is actually about two people, but I identify with Johnny Carlo himself. So he's a hitman for the mafia in New York City. Now, I've never killed anybody.
Yeah.
But the similarity between me and him is that in the book, he takes a pride in what he does. It's something that he feels he's naturally good at. And for me, that's my writing. That's something I feel like I'm naturally good at. It's not something I necessarily do for fun, though I like to do it. It's something that I take a lot of pride in.
That's fantastic. I always love hearing about authors and their excitement and their passion, and I hear it in your voice, and it's absolutely so cool that you are truly writing for you and you want to share it with the world and see if the world likes it. And as far as I can tell, you're doing a pretty good job, and it seems like people are really liking what you're putting out there. So are you going to keep going, or do you kind of have like a deadline?
I set myself a goal for 2025, in the middle of 2025, that I will be leaving my day job and pursuing writing full-time as my full-time career. It's no reflection upon the job I have now. It's, it supports my family. It's a very honest job. I've always, in a way, enjoyed it. I like it. But upon discovering this talent of mine, I just kind of realized that was my purpose. So that's something that I'm pursuing.
Fantastic.
And what's nice about that is then, I'm never going to retire.
Isn't that always a plus? If you can turn what you're passionate about into residual income, and you can just live your life and relish in your accomplishments.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. So I do want to go back to Ice Rising and Icebox. So it is two books about the same man, Alexander Lincoln, right? How many books do you see yourself writing to this story?
I would have to say a minimum of 4. I'm actually working on the third book, Ice Rain.
Talk a little bit more about that title. Why did you pick Ice Rain?
So ice is, a common theme among my titles, and it's actually a play on the word rain, because it's actually REIGN. So in a way, it kind of means that it's his reign, as well as it's going to be raining ice, because in the story, he kind of comes back from a very low point in Icebox to really reestablish himself in his environment and to really go to the next level in his life. So how it starts off is, so in Ice Rising, the beginning, he's taught 2 principles. Protect those you love, stay off the street. Which for a while he toes the line until he's involved in a drive-by that claims the life of one of his friends and wounds his little brother. Now, he's 14 at this time, so he feels that he has to join one of the gangs in the city in order to keep protecting those he loves. And, by this point, we realize that he is a natural businessman. So that's what he uses throughout the books, is he comes up with these ingenious different criminal rackets to support his income, not just the traditional, drug dealing or, robbing people. He's actually very, he does like insurance scams, protection rackets, stuff of that nature. Icebox, the direct sequel to that, takes us to a whole different setting. So at this point, Alex now goes by Ice, hence the titles. He gets himself into a little bit of trouble, and he ends up going to prison for a few years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Icebox takes us off the street and puts us behind the walls. During this time, his initial plan is keep his head down, stay out of trouble, get parole, get back out, go back to business. But people come to visit him in prison, and they tell him, since you're out of the game pretty much, it's only a matter of time before somebody in the gang decides they can do what you can do better than you can. So you have to figure out a way to make money while you're in prison in order to keep everybody loyal to you. And then coupled with that issue is the fact that he also has people in prison that he was enemies with on the street, he's not up with. So now he has to make dangerous waters.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. This series does sound very well put together. Now that you're explaining the titles, we have Ice Rising, which is the rising of him, and then we have Icebox, where he kind of comes back down, and then we have Ice Rain, where he's just coming back on top. So what is that fourth book going to be? Where do you see Alexander Lincoln ending his journey?
Well, that's the issue with me, is that I have no idea where my story is.
That's too far in the future.
It is. Wait, I can't even tell you what's going to happen in the next chapter of this. Until I sit down and start writing it.
Out of all of the books that you've done, I know you said right at the beginning that writing kind of comes easy to you, but is there any particular book, or maybe currently, that you're kind of having that traditional writer's block scenario, or do you have your path pretty clear?
The only writer's block I have right now, so I work on my books one at a time.
Yeah. As you probably should. Right? The old trope is that if you start multiple things, you probably won't finish them.
Exactly. So the only issue I have is just coming up with the idea for the next book. It's a little more challenging when I deviate from the Ice series, which I've done. When I wrote Ice Rising, I finished that. I took a break from that series, and I worked on The Ballad of Johnny Carlo, which is my second published book. And then after I was done with that book, I went back and I wrote Icebox. And then from there, I deviated again, and I wrote Life's Dark Corners, which is my upcoming novel. So I'm kind of keeping up with that pattern. So I'll probably have Ice Rain, and then I'll probably work on a whole nother book that I have an idea for, and then I'll probably finish off the series, unless there's another book in there somewhere.
Gotcha. So talk a little bit more about the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. Like, where did that idea come from? Where did you get your inspiration?
So the Ballad of Johnny Carlo is it has a heavy mafia presence. And I've always been fascinated with the mafia. Godfather's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Mario Puzo has written two of my favorite novels, The Last Don and The Godfather. So I wanted to write a mafia story, and this book, it does have a huge mafia presence, but it's not exclusively a mafia story. It's actually about two people. One is Johnny Carlo himself, who I mentioned before. He's a hitman for the New York City Mafia with his own moral code. No women, no kids, no cops. So definitely the old school mentality. However, the problem is the mafia, this is the modern times. The mafia, they're no longer what they were. So they're actually merging together with other criminal groups, the Russian mafia, the triads, the cartels, the Yakuza, and they're forming the sort of uber crime syndicate to basically restore themselves to the power that they once had. The problem is with Johnny is that their agenda is more ruthless than his moral code. So there's a conflict. Eventually, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and Johnny realizes he can't do this anymore. But you don't just quit the mafia. So he has no choice but he changes his name, runs down to New Orleans, through contacts, gets another job down there, and becomes a legitimate citizen. while we're down there, there's also the second main character, who is Leisha Abraham. She's a homicide detective for the New Orleans Police Department, and everything a cop's supposed to be: smart, tough, dedicated, honest. And she is actually investigating the series of gangland murders between these two rival factions. What complicates her investigation is the fact that her father, Frank Abraham, is the crime boss of New Orleans. So during this time, Johnny and Alicia meet, and you wouldn't believe it, but they end up falling in love. Then Johnny finds out that the mafia has their sights set on New Orleans and Alicia away. So he picks his guns back up and goes back into the battle. So it's a question of, will they walk off into the sunset together, or will they share a grave, pretty much.
Wow, and that is all in that one book. How fascinating. Do you see Johnny going into a series, or do you plan on keeping it as a standalone?
Well, so I had so much fun with this book, and you have to read it, but there's so many different characters in this book that I believe that all of them could have their own stories. Actually, in Life's Dark Corners, kind of a preview for those who are interested, one of the short stories in Life's Dark Corners centers around Leisha's father, Frank, when he was younger, and he meets his future bodyguard, Brutus Claymore, who is a prominent figure in the Battle of Johnny Carlo. He's this huge behemoth of a man who's also very educated and brilliant. So he's not just dumb muscle.
Yeah.
I created his origin story, and that's among one of my short stories. So, like I said, a lot of these characters, I just love them. There's Johnny, of course. There's Leisha. I can really see books being made about them. There is the head of the mafia family that Johnny works for, Dominic. There's his granddaughter, Aurora, she is next in line to run the family. She's also an assassin, and she's Johnny's fiance at the start of the book. Johnny's best friend, Vincent, who is he also works for the family. He's a hitman, but he's definitely like a darker version of Johnny. Frank Abraham, of course, I wrote his, it's mostly Brutus's origin story, but Frank plays a prominent role in it. He's the crime boss that has the old code of honor,
Right.
his own code.
So these characters, it sounds like they have a lot of depth to them, which is fantastic. That's what you want. That's what you need, right? How do you come up with such depth? Do you storyboard each character out and just try and think of everything? Or does it kind of come with the flow of your writing?
Well, with the Battle of Johnny Carlo, I did kind of go a different route. I started with a character list. Just these characters started popping up in my head, and I wanted to use them. There was only one character that I pretty much edited out. He doesn't make an appearance in there because I feel like his character would have been filler.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the rest of these characters, they all represent just a different. Somebody said it like this. They said the old Dungeons and Dragons sort of like table of like lawful good, good, lawful evil type thing. My characters. There's a character for each of those little boxes in here.
Yeah.
Leisha Abraham would be lawful good. Vincent would be chaotic evil. That type of thing.
Awesome. So I know you just said that you can see more books coming out about each individual characters. Is that what you said, just to clarify?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Together, give them each their own sequel or prequel. There may be a couple characters that won't get a sequel. I won't say, I don't want to give that away.
Sounds like you're busy for another 5 years, so trickle it out, trickle it out.
Right, exactly.
Well, that is fantastic. All of your books so far sound absolutely thrilling and amazing, and I cannot wait to read them myself, especially the Ice Rising series. That's probably going to be my favorite. um, so, in terms of going the rest of the way of 2023, and I see this all the time on TikTok. Everybody does it differently. There are some authors who start making big plans before their book comes out, and then there's authors who want like 10 books out before they even try to start making bigger moves. So has that always been your thought process when sitting down and starting to write? Did you want a bunch of books out first before you started to kind of make your way to social media? Or is it all just kind of happening organically as you're just like feeling your toes in the water?
That's actually a very good question. So with Ice Rising, I kept that one pretty close to the chest when I was writing it. I did tell people I was working on a book, but I did not have a social media presence.
Gotcha.
Aside from, a personal Facebook page. So I wanted to wait until the book was published, and then I could go out and say that I was an established author. Here's the proof. I'm holding the book in my hand. And the funny thing with that was I didn't think I would have to put in as much work. I was self-published. This is really rookie thinking here. I kind of figured, people pick it up. It's a great book. People pick it up on Amazon. I'll get lucky and somewhere.
Right, definitely rookie thinking.
And then, so I publish it the first month. I go on Facebook and I say, hey, everybody, I post a book. Oh, cool. About a few people buy it, and I made a little bit of money. And so I'm thinking, okay, good. Then the next month, no sales. And
yep, it fluctuates. Even if you're a big author, I feel like it fluctuates.
Right. So after that, when I started working on the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, I also started building my social media presence. And actually, another rookie thought I had was when I first finished the book, before I published it, I thought that the first agent I was going to contact would pick it up. So it goes by. Nobody picked it up.
Nobody, yep.
And I didn't want to self-publish, but I realized, well, you know what? This is going to have to happen, one way or another. So I self-published, and and so I learned two lessons within a year, two very important lessons. You might have to do it yourself, and you're going to have to put the work. So when I started working on the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, that's when I really upped my my social media presence, learning a lot of the ins and outs, which I'm still learning, continuously building. And so now, I'm just, every day I'm trying to get more and more exposure. I definitely have a lot more ideas running around my head. To me, this is just the beginning.
And it sounds like you are off to a great start. You have a small little portfolio behind you, and then with the importance of the rise of social media, I want to say probably within the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be super crucial to try and be on the forefront of that. So I think you're in that sweet spot, honestly. You're in that perfect sweet spot. You are starting just in time.
Right, definitely, most definitely. It's a great learning experience. It's great networking. It's great exposure, and it's just, we no longer live in the era where you're a mystery. You have out there on the forefront. Even if, and then you look at some of the people that you want to be like. the celebrities and the people in your industry that have all the exposure, like, what are they doing? They're on there all the time.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
and sometimes they're just posting goofy stuff, like, I remember
Trends or, yeah.
right. I mean, shoot, I remember I was following James Patterson on Instagram. There's a picture of him eating a big birthday cookie, and I was like, all right, well, he eats $500 million, so I guess I'll have to start eating some cookies then.
Especially around New Year's, that New Year's post for you, just get your face in like a cake or something. New Year's pie to the face, right?
Right. Right, and you also want to be engaging,
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's being engaging, not just saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. There's also organic content that you have to post, and being writers, there's a lot that we can work with. There's, talking about the art of writing, the business behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a lot of comedy. There's a lot of comedy that you can do, like memes. I do TikTok videos that a lot of people find hilarious. Words of encouragement, just things like that really attract people to you and gives you a more three-dimensional, or gives them a more three-dimensional perspective of you, not just, buy my book.
Yeah.
That being said, whoever's listening to this, buy my book.
Buy his book. It sounds so exciting, honestly. So over on TikTok, and I haven't really I've come across a few authors, the big old hashtag book talk, right? I've come across a few authors who are very involved in book talk. Is that one of your main goals, or is it just more of like you really want to engage with your readers on a personal level, or both?
Definitely engaging with my readers, but I'm definitely willing to look into it. I actually just started TikTok. I think it was like late November.
Okay, so very recent.
Yeah, I'm pretty new to that field, but I've been putting content out every single day.
Good. And so that's what they recommend.
Right. I have over 120 videos already made. And my goal is to have 1,000 videos made by the end of this year.
I think that is a great goal, and the fact that you already have 100, I think you'll make it no problem.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
New Year's resolutions.
Exactly. So for this fourth book that you are working on, you said it will come out later this month. What date? Do you have it set already?
January 25th.
January 25th. And my apologies if you said that. I forgot. But to reiterate, yes. Okay, so January 25th. And what is the title again for everyone listening?
The title is Life's Dark Corners. So this book is definitely it's different from all the others because it's actually 5 different stories in one, 5 short stories that all center 5 completely different people who from different walks of life, who they some are criminals, some aren't, some are normal people, and they they get involved somehow with the criminal underworld. But like I said, the stories are so different. One character is his name's Calvin. He is he's a 20-year street criminal, just barely making ends meet, being a criminal, and he finally finds a little niche for him that works out very well until it all comes crashing down. Shallow seeds, whatever it's sort of whatever you reap, you sow type story. Then you have Wish Not to Remember, which is about what's his name, Steven, he's an amnesiac photographer. He wakes up in a hospital, has no memory of who he is aside from the fact that he was attacked. Well, he was told he was attacked. I'm sorry. And he finds himself involved in this investigation into these serial homicides, which he decides to, try to kind of throw his hat into the ring and try to find the killer. Third story is a lyric for Brutus, and that is about Brutus Claymore, who I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
It's about his beginnings and how he became to be the bodyguard slash right-hand man for Frank Abraham from Ballad Johnny Carlo.
Oh,
The
okay.
the fourth story is A Soldier's Widow, and that's about this elderly woman, Janine, who her husband was a Vietnam War vet, and she finds herself targeted by these two hitmen, these two wannabe hitmen. What's different is that she actually gets the upper hand on one of them, but the other one's now looking for revenge. So, she's definitely no damsel in distress, this one. Her husband taught her things. And then the last story is a fantasy best to forget, which is about this young teenager, Dean, Dean is a video game guy. He loves the violent video games. So him being 14, he's very impressionable, and he's having a hard time differentiating real life from what's fake. So he decides to plan a murder, and he picks one of his classmates.
Ooh.
Follows him in, and is he going to go through with it? What's going to happen? So, definitely 5 totally different stories.
Wow. See, that sounds super exciting as well. I love your ideas, and I love how you come up with these. So, you don't have to answer this next question, but it kind of came to my mind as a writer to writer. So, my story that I'm working on a book, and there is different perspectives to it. And I think everybody writes this type of literature just a little bit differently depending on what your style is. So if you don't mind me asking, what is your writing process to make sure that you get everybody's perspectives in there as if it's their own story, but then meshing it together into one book?
I guess the best way to describe it is I just not personify, but I just kind of let them speak to me about, like, what's the next thing that's going to happen.
I love that. What a simple yet impactful answer. I love it. So how many pages, if you haven't finished it already, I know the publication date's coming up, but how many pages is this going to be?
Lifestar Corners. So Lifestar Corners, itself is, I believe it's roughly 235 pages, give or take. But there's actually an excerpt from one of the other books in there. I think it's the Ballad Johnny Carlo. I think that's the excerpt. Yes, I think it's that. It's either that one or I think. For some reason I can't remember, but
that's okay.
So for somebody that picks up Lifestar Corners as the first book of mine for them to read, they're for another one of my books that if they read that as well and see if they're interested in picking that one up as well. So that adds about another 20, 30 pages or so. So the whole book roughly is together is about 250, 260 pages.
Amazing.
Yeah. Ice Rising is about, maybe 400 or so. Icebox is my smallest one. That's about 220 pages. But Ballad Johnny Carlo is a whopping 525 pages.
Oh, wow. Do you have you have embarked on a very intense journey over the past few years. Do you ever get overwhelmed? Do you have any advice for people who want to do a similar path but don't know exactly where to start?
Yes, actually. So I was very overwhelmed in just the beginning, writing the first book, just because, it's the whole really kind of putting yourself out there and taking what's in your head and putting it on paper. That's always the hardest step. For me, the first step is it's the hardest, but it's always very simple. And for me, it was just writing chapter 1. And then after I managed to somehow get this book done, then I started on the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. And after I finished writing the 3rd chapter, I kind of sat back and wondered if it was something I could really pull off, just because and I think anybody that reads it will understand the 3rd chapter, the story really gets ambitious. It took me about 15 months to write this book, and when I was done, it just all came together perfectly. Yeah, so I mean, it'll be overwhelming at times, but you'll get through it, you know.
The most important thing is don't stop. Don't let that feeling consume your passion and your decision to write in the first place.
Well, you know, the best thing to say to yourself is that stopping is not an option, you know, because you never know when, like, you know, the time you give up may be, you know, you may give up the day before the big break.
Exactly.
You don't want to risk that. There is no timeline for this. There's no plan where it says, okay, hey, listen, if this doesn't happen in 5 years, just go ahead and give up. You know, it just wasn't meant to be type thing. No, you just don't know. You have no idea. So why stop? There's no quitting's not an option.
Quitting is not an option. I love it. That's a t-shirt and a tweet and a banner and a bumper sticker.
Definitely.
Fantastic. I think that is a great stopping point. Everybody, James Michels on the podcast Alone in the Thoughts Room. If you are not inclined to go buy his stuff now, I am telling you, go do it after listening to this. All of his works sound absolutely amazing, and he has really great things coming up, great things planned for the next 5 years for everyone to enjoy. So, James, tell us, which social media platforms are you on so we can all flood your inbox?
Okay, so I am available on Facebook on my author page, James Michels. That's it's facebook.com/@jamestherealmike. I'm sorry, facebook.com/jamestherealmike. I'm also available on Twitter, twitter.com/jamesrealmike, instagram.com/jameemichels, and then tiktok.com/@jamestherealmike.
James the Real Mike. So was there a specific, I know I have just questions flooding my brain for days, but I know we're kind of on a tight schedule, but was there a decision process going behind James Real Mike, or was it just available, or why the real in there?
It's a subliminal message to get people to pronounce my last name right.
Oh, have I been doing it wrong the entire time?
No, you did absolutely right.
Okay, perfect.
It's just because Michels does not have an A in it. So for everybody that's on Amazon right now, if you're not finding my books, it's because you're putting an A in my last name, or Amazon is. There's no A in my last name. So
Gotcha.
Throughout my life, everybody said Michels, Michels, Michels. It's like, no, it's Michels. So I take Mike, James the Real Mike. I even get called that at work. What's up, Mike? and so it's like Michels.
Gotcha.
So kind of like a subliminal steering for people to, name right.
Findable. Is that a word? Findable.
The mispronunciation of my last name has been a family curse for many generations. So hopefully that's also part of my duty, is to make it big so that, everybody will pronounce it correctly. And hopefully the time will come when there's a Michels walking around with an A in his last name, and they'll accidentally edit out the A just because they instead of the other way around.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and your books. Everything that you're doing sounds fantastic. Do not stop. And that, I think, is the official quote of this episode, is just do not stop.
I love it.
Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with us alone in the Thoughts Room. I am Ali Ryerson. I will have all of his social medias tagged in the description below. So go ahead and check that out and follow him, as well as my socials will be down there as well. I have a lot of poetry on my Instagram. I have my own personal blog. And like you heard, I am working on my own book. So between the both of us, you will not get bored. James, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you all next week on Alone in the Thoughts Room.